Hello and welcome to Ellie's Batting Mentality, where we aim to help you score more runs. Our philosophy at EBM is to focus on the controllables to give yourself the best chance of success. This is our maiden podcast episode, and we're lucky today to be interviewing Otago Volts' newly crowned captain, Luke Georgeson. Luke is a talented seam bowling all-rounder who cut his teeth as an opening batsman for the Wellington Firebirds. With 6 half-centuries in first-class cricket and 2 list day hundreds to his name with the bat, not to mention 1 5-wicket haul in red ball cricket, 2 in list day matches, it's fair to say he's got a lot to offer. Having moved south to Dunedin just over a year ago, the 25-year-old has been given a new role batting in the middle order this season. We spoke about a range of batting topics, from pacing a chase to remembering to watch the ball, and how he's utilising training to introduce new options into his repertoire to allow him to score at a quicker rate. I've played alongside Luke over 3 different seasons for civil service north of Ireland here in Belfast, so if you detect a bit of familiarity in the conversation, that's why. He had a productive time in Northern Ireland, making such an impact that he was offered a 2-year deal by Cricket Ireland back in 2022. He initially accepted the offer before realising he wasn't ready to give up the dream of playing for New Zealand, and both parties agreed to mutually terminate the contract just a few weeks later. He's driven to get the most out of himself as a player, and is the perfect subject to get the EBM podcast off the mark. Here's my conversation with Luke Georgeson. So you're just touching on that. That's fascinating how you talk about, strategy around chasing a big total. So in essence, you're sort of saying that, the loss of, I'd say traditionally you'd think about the loss of a wicket is going to cost you time in the game, right? As a batting unit, it's going to cost you time for the new men to get accustomed to the conditions and then, score at a rate that's acceptable based on the run rate required. So how is that managed in the environment you're talking about now?
I think, great question. I think gone are the days of like backloading a chase or a run or setting for that matter. Like gone are the days of going, we think we can get, say, chasing 300, we can get 100 off the last 10 kind of thing. So let's sort out how we can get to 200 by 40. And I think my understanding of it and how I've sort of interpreted it is that because like if you do that, and these are just arbitrary numbers, but like you're sort of giving yourself one bite of the cherry. Whereas the big thing he's spoken about is like game pace. So like say you need 6 and over, for example. How is 6 and over from the get-go realistic? Yeah, okay, cool. That's how we think we're going to chase this. We've got 10 wickets to spare. There are going to be times when, like you say, losing a wicket might slow the game down, but now the expectation for guys coming in is that they can get off to a fast start. They can get to 10 off 10, 15 off 20, whatever it is kind of thing. So that not heaps of time you don't lose heaps of time there. And there are times where if you do take a risk and it comes off, all of a sudden the run rate required goes down to 4 because someone's gone out and smashed it. Finn's probably a great example of it in the power play. Like the power play is just a free hit. And if he gets out and can strike at 200, he can get so far ahead of the game, which actually gives everyone else a bit of time. To then get themselves in and make sure you can chase it, if you know what I mean. But I say the biggest thing is, I would say previously we would have been taught to have chased. You get 3, let's get 100 off the last 10, let's get 80 off the last 10, but that's completely out the window. Let's try and chase 6. You want to be like, you don't want to let the run rate get out of control, if that makes sense, is what I've interpreted it as.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So does that mean that from a tactical perspective, you start thinking about utilising matchups a little bit more in a 50 over game as well?
Yeah, I'd say definitely in a T20, but maybe less so in a 50 over game. But there's definitely a fluidity in the order that, if, for example, there's a short side or they know the left arm spinner's got X amount of overs left and there might be a matchup better than that, then that could involve people slotting down the order kind of thing. But definitely in T20 cricket, you can see how prevalent like an over can swing a game. So if a left arm spinner's bowling and they take a wicket on the first over, then you've got a left-hander that should be batting 9, but they might throw him up to go and try and tee him up because they know they've got 5 balls spinning in kind of thing. So definitely, but probably the more the matchup comes and that like risk management of the wickets is that if I know that if a left arm spinner comes on, I'm batting as a left-hander, we're going, okay, we think we need to throw a punch. Like that's on me from there because that's my matchup. as opposed to necessarily putting in a guy for a specific
Mm.
circumstance. In one day cricket, that is, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's fascinating. So is there, how much focus then becomes on partnerships and making sure that a new guy coming in, is there chat about just taking a few balls to make sure you do get in before taking your best options on, or is it just a matter of immediately from ball one you're trying to play on instinct and instinct that you've been training in the nets for so long?
Definitely the latter. And like, it's probably more on the guy coming in to make sure that he can get, like, if anyone has to assume any risk, say, for example, you come in, like, it's almost on the new guy to do it because the guy that's in has got the pace of the wicket, knows the run rate, all that sort of stuff. He's going at that. So it's almost on the guy coming in to try and throw the punch if someone is going to take a risk. And again, obviously, matchups come into it as well. But yeah, there's like, I think might have been 280, might have been the average score across the last how many years of Ford Trophy cricket in New Zealand or something like that, which pertains to a strike rate of like nearly 90. So like the expectation around that is that guys can come in and get and strike at 90 more or less from the get-go kind of thing. So yeah, I definitely think there's that gone are the days of guys coming in and being circumspect because you can't, unless you've got heaps of power and you want to backload it, which I think is increasingly rare. Um, you just don't want to let teams get away on you like that because good teams will then be able to close out the game, if you know what I mean. So whereas if you can lose if you're going at sixes the whole time and you lose a couple of wickets or whatever, but you're still sort of at sixes, you're still sort of in the game. And if you need your lower order to get the last 30 or 40 off the last 6 or 8 runs, then that's actually attainable. Whereas if you're expecting them to get the last 100 off 10, that's kind of like a once in a blue moon sort of scenario. So
Interesting. And so, then if you get to the point where, say, the team is, ahead of the rate, whether that's batting first, you're ahead of where you thought you might need to be, or if you're chasing, you're ahead of what your run rate required is there much discussion around making sure that someone's there at the end, or is it more like if you're in a moment when you're feeling good, just sort of ride that moment?
definitely from batting first point of view, like, and pass scores are they're like a bit of a what do you call it, a crystal ball sort of thing. No one actually knows what the pass score is, but like if you say you're setting yourself out to get 300, for example, and you're well on track and you guys are good and guys are in and batting well, then that's definitely you get yourself in a position to bury the game like then and there. Like, okay, cool, we're both going to go for this here, and if we come off, we're going to get 350, and there's no chance that they're going to chase that. That's completely that like that. You just win the game there and then, and it doesn't matter who bowls, kind of thing. And I think similarly from a that would be setting, and then from chasing, I think it's similar. Like if you've got wickets in hand and you got guys are batting well, and you've got a chance to really put the foot down and win the game, because you can break the back of a chase. And if a guy comes off, brilliant, game one. And if not, cool. It's actually, especially in white ball cricket, it's now on the next guy to do the job, kind of thing. And I think like the strength of a team is that you can create an environment where guys are comfortable doing that, and they know, oh fuck, if I get out here, I obviously don't want to get out, and I'm not going to be reckless, but I take a good option and I do get out. I have wholehearted faith in the guy that's coming in behind me. And we have that luxury when you're playing professional cricket because your teams are normally pretty balanced and you've got big batting orders or strong batting orders. And obviously, as you filter down to A cricket, club cricket, school cricket, things like that, it's probably a little bit harder to go in with that mindset because you're more reliant on one or two guys. But definitely, as you go up, the teams are more balanced. The opposition bowling attacks better if you've got a chance to win the game, or at least like make a big contribution towards winning the game. I think you'd be silly not to.
Okay.
Because would that
So
be different to what? Would that be different to what you grew up around?
yeah, totally, man. Like a little bit of it has come through experience, and I really take your point around, the quality of your 11 and the depth in the batting lineup does give you the opportunity to take more risks, right? If you have more faith in those around you,
Yeah,
then of course, you can play at a high level of risk for a longer period of time, right? And from a team perspective, that's surely, you know, exactly where you want to be, right? You want to be able to continually push the limit as opposed to, like, I feel at club level, potentially, often in your 11, you've got 7, 8 guys, maybe max, who can make a meaningful contribution with the bat.
And even then, you're getting probably at least two or three of those on game day on any given day. Probably not quite at the races for whatever reason, So you get down to three or four guys really who are going to need to do the bulk of the work. And so I think, mentality comes down to as a senior batter, it comes to, well, I want to be the guy who's here at the end. Because I feel like if I go, and our say junior guys are playing, their quality experience spin through the middle overs, we're just going to be killed, right? We're going to be killed. The run rate's going to go up too high, and from a club level, we obviously don't have necessarily the quality of ball striking lower down, in the lower order as well, to mean that if you get behind, you can catch up. Pretty much often in club cricket, right? It's rare that if you get behind, you can actually get back up to the required rate. So yeah, managing your resources is a really tricky one, right? From a club perspective, but it's really interesting to see how the mentality has evolved, because I still feel like, from my perspective anyway, and obviously I'm prepared to be challenged on this, but I feel like, yeah, there should always be some responsibility if a guy is in and, he has rhythm, he understands the wicket, he knows the bowling attack well. Still feel like it should be his job to make sure he's there at the end, because the game changes so quickly, man. He gets out, maybe the new man coming in takes a risk, gets out, and you're two fresh men. All of a sudden, the run rate's gone, from 7.5s to maybe 9, and you're having to start again. So that's a really interesting scenario to sort of consider. But how has it changed your own training? Does it mean that you're trying to take more risks in your training, for example?
Big time. Like it's probably a unique situation for me because my role is probably changing quite a lot this year. I'm playing more of like a genuine all-rounder role. I'm going to bat in the middle order 6 or 7. So, like there's such a high importance on me getting what they term like a fast start. So trying to figure out ways, and there's a good chance I'll be starting against spin, and having coming from opening the batting, like you can absorb a few dots because there are only 2 guys out. If you beat the infield, it's 4. So you're now in a position where you'll hit the same shot and you'll only get 1. So there's probably a bigger emphasis on the stuff in between. So trying to find a way to get off strike. These are real cricket cliches, but trying to find a way to get off strike and get to a fast start where I can get run a ball to 10, run a ball to 15 kind of thing. And how that looks on any given day is slightly different. But for me, it's like I definitely think the goalposts move a bit when you move down the order. You go from expecting yourself to, like at the top of the order, you want to score hundreds, you want to score big hundreds, you want to average 40, all this stuff, all the glamour stuff. Whereas when you're batting sort of slightly lower down the order, chances are, especially in white ball cricket, you're not going to score hundreds, things like that. And there might be days where the team needs you to get 20 off 15, and that's actually just as valuable. So I think like wrapping my head around that has been a big learning. Like, okay, my actual role and my output is going to be different because of that. And then I suppose to your question in terms of training stuff, absolutely. It's trying to play reverse sweep, paddle sweep, hard sweep, use my feet, all these sorts of things, figuring out what I can and can't do on given wickets. So that when I get out into the middle and know, I probably need to try and push a boundary here or trying to take an option, I can then make a good decision in my head about what I think is a good option on a given wicket. And then if I get out doing it, so be it, kind of thing. Do I need to walk at the seam, or do I need to run at the seam, or do I need to sit back? All those different things. So it's probably just a bit more, I'd say, proactivity around it, because they say when you're batting at the top of the order, nice hard ball, 2 guys out, 9 guys up, like you can get away with a few dots and whack it. So I think that's probably the main change. And that definitely needs to be trained. Unless you're just a freak and you can play all the shots, but I'm not, unfortunately, yet. So yeah.
So I'm interested in that sort of change in mentality. Does being more proactive, does that actually make it more difficult to just simply focus on the ball and react, because you're thinking about what type of position, either, moving your position on the crease, that potentially changes depending on the type of bowler, whether you're creating room outside off, or maybe trying to get across the offside to give yourself a chance to hit leg side, or whether you're coming down the crease as you talk about. Does that complicate it from the perspective of, because you're focusing on your position, you're less focused on what's coming at you?
Absolutely. And it's such a fine line. Like you say, you get over you overcomplicate it and you're over proactive and all, you forget about, like you say, watching the ball and things like that. So there's definitely a time where absolutely go out and bat normally, like bat properly, have a look, try and get yourself in kind of thing. But it's probably more the clarity around how quickly you can assess conditions and go, okay, this is a good option if I need to take one kind of thing. And that's left arm spinner comes on, I'm going to hard sweep him more. A guy, Blair Tickner, for example, comes on who's a bit heavier, bounces it a bit more. I might try and sit back and try and like to get into his short ball kind of thing. So it's probably more those. But absolutely, like we did some scenarios last week up at Alexandra, and I did exactly that. I was trying to fucking paddle sweep, trying to reverse sweep, and it's like, just watch the ball. Like, you're a good enough player to get to 10 off 10 kind of thing. And if they bowl well, that's fine. They see good fields, then maybe you might have to take a risk earlier than you think you do. But yeah, it's such a fine line, and more often than not, you've got a bit more time than you think. And so actually watching the ball, getting yourself in, you can get pretty close to that fast start you're looking for. And then if you don't, then that's maybe when you need to take the risk kind of thing. But I guess it's just having the clarity and the thought and the conversations around what might be good on a given wicket to a given bowler on a given day.
And that's a great point. Like, is there, with new management in place, is there discussions around how the batting unit, especially when batting first, communicates the pros and cons of what's going on from the conditions, or is there more focus on making sure that those batsmen that are yet to come are actually watching the game, understanding where the ball is ending up? Obviously if the ball's squirting square of the wicket, often, it's maybe a bit quicker, whereas if the ball's ending up a lot straighter down the ground, for example, you maybe know it's a little bit slower. So, what kinds of discussions have been had so far regarding that?
Yeah, great question. Like, threats are probably a big thing. Like, okay, is it swinging? Is it seaming? Is it bouncing? What's the wicket doing? Cool, like acknowledging all those. If they bowl the right line of length, those are the things that are going to be threatening. But most wickets, there's always there are always places that you can score. Like, for example, if it's seaming and it's a bit slower and it's seaming or whatever, then like, okay, we know that if it's short, we're going to climb into the short ball, like, because it's not going to be as quick, and vice versa. If it's not swinging kind of thing, you can get in and lean into it. So it's definitely been a real effort to flip the narrative of, okay, that's great. If they bowl in the right area, we're probably going to they might have a bigger tea towel they can land on at this game because the wickets or the conditions are conducive. But you just need to be in when the conditions are difficult, need to be more clear on, okay, if they do miss though, like, where are we going to score kind of thing. So especially in in red ball cricket as well, to be fair. But yeah, that's the way, definitely the way we've been trying to talk about it, is in a more cool, like, acknowledge the threats, but also there's going to be some parts that if they miss in the XYZ spot, then we can really, really punish them, I suppose. So that's yeah. And I think that's a great way to think about the game in general, because if you sit there and go, oh, it's swinging, it's seaming, it's bouncing, we're buggered here, like 110 is a good score, like, you know what I mean? So That's sort of a hiding to nothing.
So I guess coming back to what you were talking about before, I feel like a lot of young players, it's really easy to get so caught up in what's going on in your own mind, and maybe being caught up in fears at times, like fear of getting out. Also how your game's going. Maybe you're struggling to find rhythm in your innings, and you think, geez, where am I scoring one here? Is there more of a focus now on actually, trying to get out of your own head, and focus more on the rhythm of the game from the perspective of, you talk about trying to be a little bit more proactive, and ultimately, you're in essence, you're preempting what the bowler's likely to bowl you, right? So there's less focus on, your own fears, your own thoughts around how you're going on the day, and more on, right, what's the match scenario here? What's the bowler actually thinking? Where's he trying to get me out? And depending on the stage of the game, he might actually be trying to restrict me. So if he's trying to restrict me from scoring, where's he bowling? If he's bowling wide hole, how can I get in a position to, best execute a boundary scoring option to that? Is that discussed at all?
Yeah, and I guess that's where it gets a little bit tricky, because, like you mentioned, young guys, like, it's very easy for me to say in the position I'm in, oh, you should be playing this shot and that shot and going at this strike rate. But like, kids and club players are all judged on runs. Like, runs are your currency, right? And like, if you're playing that sort of style, there is risk involved, and you may like not score runs for a while, like you say. But the easiest way I've always found, and this is probably just consistent with me in general, but like I always ask myself what the team needs from me right now, whether the bat or the ball, and that sort of like levels me down. Okay, what's the score? Are we setting? Are we chasing? How many wickets in that, and that sort of thing. And then from there you can sort of start to formulate a plan. But I say that I feel like that sort of percentage here brings you right back in. What does the team need from me right now? I need to stick with Ali here. We need to bat for 10 overs because we're 3 down, 3 for spit. We had a bad start. We need to just get back in the game, hold on, or vice versa. Okay, we're none down. I feel like me or Ali can, if we get a matchup, we can try and force the envelope a bit, kind of thing. So that's definitely the way I've thought about it. And I feel like that kind of takes the pressure off you, but it's less about, oh, I need to score 100 runs here, but it's like, okay, the team needs me to we need to get 250. We think 250 is a good score. So how am I going to go about that? Oh, and then you look back and you're like, oh, I got 100. That's great. But like, do you know what I mean? So I think it's two very different ways to look at it. So, but yeah, that would be the question I'd ask myself. What does the team need from me right now? What's the score? What's the conditions? All that stuff.
Awesome. And then, it's all well and good, I guess, a player signing up to the idea that if I play in a way that the team needs me to play, my spot's safe in some regard, regardless of outcomes, right? So how challenging is that for players when it comes to selection, that ultimately, you need to play selflessly, with the current sort of structure of what sounds like the communication from management is, let's play selflessly, let's do what the team needs. In some manner, you're going to have guys who are taking on risks before they're probably set and before they're in, therefore their likelihood of a good outcome is lower, right? So how is that managed, both from a player perspective in terms of like levels of confidence and, how willing are players to do that, and also in terms of management around the communication of, maybe guys he's a top 6 batter, batting 5 or 6, but he's made 3 scores of 20 and 1 below 10 in his 4 innings. He's striking high, but someone else playing second 11 cricket, banging the door down, batting in that same position, making big runs. How is that sort of navigated in the current team environment?
I'd hope that the expectations have been like catered to what the style of cricket that you're trying to play. But I think when you're like we've spoken about it quite a lot, and like on paper it sounds like a really big change, but if you actually have a look around, like I said, I think 280 was the average 50 over score in New Zealand domestic cricket in the last few years or whatever, like, and that sort of leads to a strike rate of, I think it's about 90. Like, it's actually not that, the sort of the numbers that people are talking about, they're actually not that uncommon. And especially as you go up, you look at the most recent World Cup and things like that, teams aren't trying to get 250 and then defend them. They're trying to blast teams out of the water. So I think that's just where cricket's going. So I think it's definitely a great point you make about guys who are out of form and things like that. And yes, that definitely comes into it. But I think, again, it speaks to the environment of the team. If guys are still willing to play in that right way, and I feel like if guys would go away from that, that would probably be found out more than the fact that they'd only average 20, if you know what I mean, like the actual way that they approach it. But I just, from what I've sort of seen around the world, and I do follow it reasonably closely, like that's just the way cricket's going, and gone are the days of like 200 being, we're trying to get 200 kind of thing. All teams are trying to strike, go 6s and 7s kind of thing. So I think the general expectation around strike rate and all those numbers has gone up, even from when I started playing domestic cricket, which was like 4 or 5 years ago, probably. It's like that's changed even in that period of time. So although it seems like quite a big change on paper, I think actually once guys get out there, they'll realise, oh, we're actually, and this is just in general, we're actually not that far off the pace. Everyone's doing it kind of thing. That's just where cricket's going. I mean, you look at Test cricket now. You look at the way England are playing their Test cricket, and that's going to be really interesting to see how long that lasts and whether that changes the way everyone else plays it. But I think, people probably underestimate how close they are. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's at the top level. And like obviously the lower you get, as if you get to domestic level, like international domestic, A cricket, club cricket, it gets more difficult because, like you say, managing resources is a bit harder when you don't have as many. And that probably speaks to bringing the par scores and things down. But yeah, I just think that's the way cricket's heading, and like it's ironic for me to say because I was like, and I probably still am a bit of a blunter, but like 3 years ago, I was trying to be the classical like Test match opening batsman, which is like goes against everything I've said, kind of thing. But it's
Yeah.
just amazing how it all evolves and the mindset around it. So
Well, it is amazing how it evolves because, when you came to play for us for the first time, we were expecting that type of player, like you call it a bit of a blunter. I would say like more of an accumulator as opposed to an aggressor. But what you seemed to find when you played for us was, you got a few runs under your belt relatively early. You found a rhythm. In that time, did you sort of go to a level with your game, a level of confidence in your own ability that you maybe hadn't reached before, and able to talk me through like, what your feelings were around that time?
absolutely, yep. I think yeah, I think you're spot on. Like obviously starting well helps. I think I can't remember what I got, but I got a few runs to start with, and that sort of helps, and you sort of relax a bit, especially in your first time as a pro. But I was very lucky to play for the Knights as well as the civil service side. So we were playing probably two and a bit games a week on average, kind of thing, and they were all white ball games, obviously. So in the NCU they played 50 over and T20, and then the provincial stuff they play 50 over and T20. So we're getting so much like access to white ball cricket. And I got to play a couple of different roles in the Knights as well. And like is again different situations need you to play in a different way. And then yeah, you had a bit of success, probably because like I've always been a bit better when the pace has been on the ball and I can sort of maneuver it, kind of thing, or accumulate it, as you
Yeah.
very politely put it. But yeah, so having to try to find a way to score off some medium pace bowling, and that just seemed to be the way that worked. And like I remember talking to you about it ad nauseum. It's just like it felt to me like it was not reckless, but it felt to me like it was really taking risks and things like that. And you kept saying, "Oh, it just looks natural. Like you just keep to see the ball and hit it," kind of thing. And I was lucky. Like batting with Ross as well was really really lucky to sort of watch him go about it as well, because it is definitely like, yeah, there was. I'm thinking like Lisburn, Davy Simpson, like wobbling them round, or Jonesy playing for CI, kind of thing. Like my worst nightmare. Um, but finding ways to basically try and hit them off their length, because if you let them just bowl their length, they will get you out, and Lord knows they did get me out. But yeah, that was, I think, the exposure to so much white ball cricket in different roles was the best part about that, because you just sort of had to get on with it and learn. So
And so in terms of your blueprint, like, was there anything that you learned in that stage of your career that you look back on and you think, right, that's a lesson I want to try and implement now, given the way the team wants to play this season in particular? And then also, looking back on last season for the Volts, you had that big 100 you scored in a 50 over game. And any lessons you took from that, which you think, right, there's an element, or every part of that innings potentially is a bit of a blueprint for me to try and replicate as often as possible?
yeah, I think the first thing is that, like, and it's a credit to the club as civil service, but like there's so much to be said for making a guy comfortable and backing a guy and making him just like obviously you're the pro and we'd love you to score runs, but there's no actual expectation. Like not expectation, but like we back here, so just go and play your game, kind of thing. That was like, to be able to be in that position, like, is a really good position to be, because you can actually just go out and focus on your batting, kind of thing, as opposed to going, oh shit, I hope they think I'm good, all this sort of carry on. But definitely, like I've definitely obviously batting at the top of the order last year. It was sort of my job to get a move on with it, and I probably didn't score the runs that I would have liked. I obviously had one good day out, but I probably didn't score the runs I would have liked. But I guess the way in which I was batting, I felt like it sort of not spurred the guys on, but it trickled down a little bit, and guys were a bit freer. And even if I got 30 off 20 or whatever it was, guys had a bit more time and they could then go out and do that. So definitely I could sort of see the value of it right there and then, because then a few of the guys that were batting down the order had a bit more time to get in, and they could go and bat properly. Well, not properly, but like they could go about their batting. So yeah, that would be, I saw the value of that approach sort of there and then. And then yeah, obviously the role's going to change a bit this year with batting down the order. So it's just trying to be as quick and adaptable. And I feel like I have had, because I was batting 5 for the Knights and opening for civil service, and have sort of done everything in between since I've been back. So having had that exposure at different times, hopefully will have me in good stead when we do it, but it's also a big unknown because I haven't done heaps of it. So
No, that's exciting, man. If you come back to training and how your training has maybe changed recently, just based on the new philosophy that the team's going for, what types of options are you looking at maybe introducing to the game? Like you talked about sweeps, reverse sweeps. Is there also, like you're looking to utilize your crease a little bit more, use your feet to spin, or typically speaking, are we talking, because spinners aren't given the ball as much air these days, maybe using your feet at that level isn't quite as prevalent as it might have been in the past?
absolutely, and I think it's all conditions based. You want to try and have as many tools in the toolbox as you can, I suppose. And if it's like a ragging, burning wicket, like running down the wicket might not be the best option. You may be better off on your sweeps that day. But if it's like true and it's coming on nicely, then you can use your feet and things like that. But I think the key is to have practiced it in the nets, understood the technique, what you can and can't do. And then it's just up for you to figure out on the day what is the best option. If you need to take a premeditated option, or if you I know that I can use my feet on this wicket because it's a good wicket, and if he does toss it up, I'm going to come down and whack it, kind of thing. So it's definitely practicing them all and trying to figure out how you can get the ball into different areas to change fields and all that sort of stuff. And then it's just up to you on the game day to adjust, pick a good option, and then do it, kind of thing. And if you get it wrong, okay, great. Like I thought that was a good option, and someone might say, no, it wasn't. It's like, okay, cool, learn. Okay, go to the next one, kind of thing. So, but there's such importance in getting the volume in the training and just practicing, getting used to it.
And how difficult is it, if you're, say, initiating a new shot, or even you're looking to play the reverse a little bit more? It's easy to, do it in training because there's no repercussions, right? But how much courage do you need in the moment to take on an option that you've been training a lot, but maybe you haven't necessarily played a lot in the past?
It's hard. Like it's really hard. But I think if you do the training and then you ask yourself the question, what is there'll be a reason you're playing it, right? For example, if they've got in a one day game, if they've got the 4 box fielders for a spinner, and you don't have an easy one to the leg side, you'll play a reverse sweep to try and get a guy across to then get the right field. And I think so if you're asking yourself, what does the team need from me right now? Is they need me to strike at X, Y, Z. And I think the easiest way for that is to have this field or to do that kind of thing, that kind of take care of all that stuff for yourself. And then you're just like, okay, well, it's the right thing to do right now. And if I get out doing it, that's great. Very easy for me to say that in the position I'm in. I understand that. But that's the sort of mindset or the sort of process that I think I'd be trying to go through, kind of thing. Because it's hard. Like if you're a club, say you just play club cricket, you get one bat a week and they have that field and you want to try a new option, you get out and you're like, oh, fuck. Like, how am I going to do it? Like next week, am I going to be brave enough to play that shot? And hopefully the answer is yes. But I mean, it'd be ignorant of me to say, oh, no, they should just be doing it anyway, kind of thing, because there are actually a whole lot of other different factors in play. But yeah, again, I'd peel it back to saying, what does the team need from me right now? Yep. They need me to try and get on with it, hit that gap, fine, top edge, out. Okay, so be it. I think I took the right option at the right time, kind of thing. You can live with that.
Yeah, it's a great question to ask. What does a team need from me right now? Because I feel like most players, I would imagine, are fairly selfless, so they would feel like the answer to that question is they need me to get on with it, or they need me to hit a boundary. But there are going to be times as well when the answer to that question is they need me to be here and be the backbone of a chaser or of a batting performance as well. So I guess you're always going to be finding ways to navigate the tension between scoring at a certain rate and making sure that you're there, right?
And that just comes in, it's just the art of batting in general, is to try and assess. And you're lucky that when you're batting, you've got a partner you can talk to about it. What do you think about this? I'm thinking this, and they might go, "Nah, we need you to keep batting here. I'll take the risk," kind of thing. Or another day he might go, "Yeah, I love that, mate. Like, have a crack at it," kind of thing. And that's just the art of it and the balance. And like I say, it's easy when we're playing regularly and you've got the resource below you where you can take the risk, kind of thing. And I guess that's the challenge.
I hope you found a little nugget in my conversation with Luke that got you thinking about how it might apply to your game. If you'd like to discuss it, you can get in touch with me on our social media channels on Ellie's Batting Mentality at Instagram, Facebook, or YouTube. If you think our discussion would resonate with someone you know, then we'd appreciate you sharing it as well. Until next time, folks, what one action can you take today to give yourself the best chance of success in your next innings. I hope you found a little nugget in my conversation with Luke that got you thinking about how it might apply to your game. If you'd like to discuss it, you can get in touch with me on our social media channels on Ellie's Batting Mentality at Instagram, Facebook, or YouTube. If you think our discussion would resonate with someone you know, then we'd appreciate you sharing it as well. Until next time, folks, what one action can you take today to give yourself the best chance of success in your next innings?